Good evening, good evening, good evening. You are now tuned into a victorious life journey to my wealthy season. I am Apostle C.J. Watkins II, divinely inspired creator of Barbers for Christ Ministries, where we are religiously barbering yet purposely serving. And we are broadcasting live here from 499 Cuts, the Ortega East Barbershop in smelly Lake Elsinore, California. And I would like to welcome you to the good news. This is a very special night tonight, people, for we are celebrating 12 weeks in ministry. Now, the number 12 in the Hebrew represents government. And so tonight we're going to be talking about government. We're going to be talking about government. We're going to take you into the scriptures and introduce you to, and maybe not introduce, possibly introduce and reintroduce you to the 12 apostles. I have found some interesting correlations between the governmental system of Alcoholics Anonymous and the governmental system that Yahweh chose to put on earth through his flesh, or through his flesh Christ. So tonight we're going to be talking about government. The message is entitled Yahweh's 12-Step Program. But before we do that, we want to introduce you to the truth. He is the one that is embracing us or bracing us with the sounds tonight. And please forgive me, people, I am a teeny little bit under the weather tonight. But I would like to welcome you all, Periscopians and Facebookians and Instagrammers and Snapchatters tonight. I am wearing my robe, my Jedi Knight robe tonight, because we are representing the apostles, which are Christ's Jedi. Absolutely incredible. So tonight, music from the truth. The album is called Love, Hope, and Truth. It's an absolutely incredible album. It is inspired around God choosing government. If you ever get a chance, check them out at some of the Family Christian stores. You may even be able to pick this album up from Walmart or possibly Target or Best Buy. It's an absolutely incredible album. I'm going to turn it on just a bit as always. I like to keep it up in the beginning and then turn it on towards the middle. So, before we begin tonight, as always, I want to send out some thanks and some praise to all of the fans, all of the followers, all of the people who have decided to give me an hour of their time. Absolutely incredible. I appreciate you. Like I said, Periscopians, Facebookians, Instagrammers, Snapchatters, even those who tweet. Those are the social media networks that I like to use. Please pray for your night, people, because I am extremely under the weather. But I am going to do this because God has created me to do this, and I am going to give you what He's given me to give you tonight. So, I want to thank someone very, very special tonight. I noticed that she tuned into the video this week, and this young lady, her name is Tanisha Bronoff, and she is a great friend of mine. She's actually a seer, people. She's a seer. Now, if you don't know what a seer is in the scriptures, seers were prophets or prophetess. They were the people sent down from heaven to speak God's word. And so Tanisha Bronoff is a seer. I met Tanisha in the late 90s during my time in high school. I was working at Farmer Jackson on 7 Mile in Livernois in Detroit, Michigan. And I met this beautiful young lady, and her and I became friends, and she became very, very intricate in my journey over the last 3 years. She was having some dreams about me, some very, very fatal dreams about me, and she hadn't been able to get in touch with me for weeks. Actually, I hadn't talked to her in years. But for weeks she was trying to get in touch with me, and she could not do that. And so when she finally was able to get in touch with me, it was through a mutual friend on Facebook. And so we were able to connect, and she tuned into the broadcast last week, and I just wanted to show her some love. As always, I appreciate the guys that tune in and young people that tune in. I appreciate it very, very much. As always, I want to thank my family, my father, and my sister, and my boys Tupac Shakur, and all these repeat viewers. I absolutely love you guys tuning in this week. Demetria Smalls and Victoria L. Johnson, and even Jennifer Kriska and Rochelle Smith. All of these repeat viewers, I appreciate you. I very much appreciate it. And always remember, I'm not doing this for you, though I love you. I am doing it for the kingdom. I am focused on what the kingdom wants. I have mixed up a vat of lemon water I have one of my customers. He is a bee guy, and he brings me organic, all natural bee honey and some bee pollen. It's absolutely incredible. So my mom told me today, I was talking to her on the phone, and she told me, son, you need to take these things and put them all together and drink them, and it will get rid of your sinus issues that you have. Tonight, before we get off into the word, I want to address something that happened last week. My son interrupted the broadcast almost through to the end of the broadcast. He chimed in on the telephone, and I was able to take a call from him. I didn't really want to because I didn't want to interrupt the broadcast, but I did anyway because often I don't get to speak to him. And when I do, we don't get to talk long because he's a video game man. He loves playing those video games. But the reason that he chimed in the time that he did was because he was online playing video games with his friends, and one of his friends told him, his friend is a religious zealot, told him that he was cursed. His name was cursed. They told him his name was cursed. Now, initially I told my son, I said, look, dude, I want to explain something to you. Everything comes with the gift and the curse on this earth. Everything carries lightness and darkness on this earth. And so your name was chosen because it represents the land of Canaan, the land of milk and honey, where God had given the children of Israel the land of milk and honey. And so your name is not cursed on some levels, but it is cursed on other levels. Because the reason that it's cursed is because of Ham. Ham, once again, was Noah's son, and he ushered in the first sin after the flood, which he saw his father naked, which was a sin. You cannot see your father naked. Pardon me, people, I am having trouble with the music. I think I'm going to have trouble with radio tonight. It is not working. The words have to be embraced with some. I've been having some trouble with my CD player, so please forgive me. I'm going to try to stay on course tonight. Even though I'm a little under the weather and technology is failing me tonight. Godspeed to me and to you. So my son, he was dealing with this young man who was telling him that his name was cursed. And I was telling him that, yes, your name carries a gift and a curse. And the curse side of your name comes from him who saw his father naked, Noah. He saw his father naked. And that was a sin. And so his father, Noah, cursed his lineage. Noah's great-grandson was Canaan. And so his name was cursed. But the blessing part of your name, son, is that you have been chosen to be named Canaan based on the promise that God gave Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that he would take his people, Israel, into a land of plenty, flowing with milk and honey. And so I was expressing to him the importance of understanding that everything comes with the gift and the curse. And yes, his name is cursed, but it's also gifted. And it was the movie Joseph that him and his mother and I were watching one day. And we decided that we're going to name him Canaan. Now, initially I didn't name him after me because I didn't want him to carry my credit problems. I didn't want him to do that. And I wanted my son to have his own identity. So I chose to name him Canaan based on the likings of his mother as we were watching the story of Joseph. Absolutely incredible. So son, I love you. And in fact, I spoke to him yesterday. We had a heart-to-heart conversation yesterday. It's absolutely incredible to be able to talk to my son minus any legalism, religious legalism. I'm able to just talk to him about life and some things. He's been asking me some questions about atheism and believing in God, and I've been able to express to him that, son, you have a choice. You can choose to believe in God, and you can choose not to believe in God. And though I believe in him, I am not going to curse you for not believing in him. Absolutely incredible. So my son and I were able to conversate. I appreciate you allowing me to interrupt the broadcast by allowing me to talk to my son. Absolutely incredible. The next thing on the agenda is the mic of the week. Now last week we weren't able to catch on to the mic of the week because of the interruption by my son. But this week we're going to give you a mic of the week that was not the mic of the week last week, because I think this mic of the week this week trumped last week's mic of the week. So This week's Mic of the Week goes to a young man by the name of Robert Allen. Robert Allen is a repeat customer of mine here at the 499 Cuts in Smelly Lake, Elsinore, California. And him and I often have conversations about some very intricate things. He loves watching history channels. He loves National Geographic. He loves food channels, Food Network. He sits hours upon hours and induces his body with these television networks, but he comes out with the most incredible information. And so this week we were talking about government. I don't think it was happen chance that we're celebrating 12 weeks of ministry here, government, and we were talking about government. And so Mr. Allen and I began to talk about what was going on. And he is not a Trump supporter, but he is definitely not a Hillary supporter. And he said, Christopher, I am trying to do whatever it takes not to put Lady Hillary in office. So though I am not a Trump supporter, I'd much rather vote for that young man as opposed to Hillary. So we started talking about that. And then we started talking about the Confederate flag. And in congruency to that, I was sitting inside of my boss's house, and we were sitting there watching the news, and there was a scandal going on, for there was a young man who was caught this week at a Trump rally with a Confederate flag hanging over the rafters, and they asked him to move it. The Secret Service actually came on the scene and had to remove the Confederate flag. And then I heard the commentators on CNN talking about the Confederate flag. They had a Caucasian young lady and two African American men conversing about the Confederate flag, and there was a young man who was talking about the Confederate flag and how he was upset, his anger about what the Confederate flag represents. Now, I'm going to say something now, people, that you must understand may offend you, but as always, I am not trying to offend you, and if I do, please charge my head and not my heart. Black people, we got to come out of this anger. We got to come out of it. We hold the highest seat in the land. There are no things on this earth, not a thing on this earth, that America can keep from us. Not even a Confederate flag. Yes, the battle was against the North and the South. Yes, the battle was against primarily blacks and whites. But just think about this. And this is something Mr. Allen and I were talking about. Just think about this. What if we had not experienced slavery? What if we had not experienced all these atrocities? It was basically genocide. What if we had not experienced any of this? Wouldn't we be as far along as we are? Would we be as far along as we are? Last week I said something about promotion and how God uses the promotion system. And what he does is he uses you based on your ability to ingest or digest pain. The more pain you can take, the more blessings God gives you. So, African American people, we must understand that this thing happened to us because God was trying to bless us. He was trying to bless us. So now that he has blessed us by putting us in the highest seat of the land, we need to come off of our angry horses and start to begin to embrace people. Now they're talking about reverse racism, where blacks are on top of this whole racist thing. It's absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. People, we need to stop being so angry. We need to begin to embrace our enemies and love them as Christ loved the church. Absolutely incredible. So Mr. Allen and I began to have this conversation. He's got a bit of a soul ties to him. He loves soulfulness. He's actually married to a Puerto Rican. And if you know anything about the Hispanic community, Puerto Ricans are the closest people to African Americans. He loves dark women, Mr. Allen does. Absolutely incredible. So after we talked about that, he began to tell me about his trip to Vegas that him and his lady is getting ready to take, and he's getting ready to go dine at a very special soul food restaurant that just opened up on Fremont Street in Las Vegas, and he's interested and very, very excited about trying some collard greens. And I in fact told him, Mr. Allen, if you ingest those collard greens, you have definitely become black on some level. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. So that qualifies him as the Mic of the Week. I have an absolute great time. Anytime Mr. Allen's in here, we have a great time. He showers me with so much information. And most of the time I cannot hold on to it. But it's so much. He only comes to see me every 3 or 4 months, but every time he's here, I just eat of his knowledge. Absolutely incredible. So, that's basically all that needs to be said tonight, people. And with all of that said, we're going to dive right into the Word. But before we do that, we're going to pray. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins, Lord, as we forgive those who sin against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Lord, I am a little bit under the weather today. But I am stepping out of my flesh to do what I believe you're asking me to do. I hope that the viewers, the fans, here on earth and there in the third heaven are not offended by the fact that I am sitting here in my pajamas in my bathrobe. It is a blessing that you have given me the opportunity to have a shop congruent to a place where I sleep. Absolutely incredible. I honor you and I praise you for that tonight. Lord, I ask you to give me the words that you want me to speak based on the things that I study. Let your glory go through this. I would like to be totally removed from this situation, come down from the third heaven, engulf me. Take me over tonight, Lord, so that I can bless someone. As the cross has come down through us and out of us, I ask you to do that for me tonight. I love you. I praise you. I honor you. In Jesus' name, amen. So we're going to take you into the book of Matthew. Yes, I'm getting out of the Old Testament this week. And I'm going to take you into the book of Matthew. And we're going to read from the book of Matthew chapter 4, verses 18 through 22. And always I read from the Message Bible. And this is what it says. Walking along the beach of Lake Galilee, Jesus saw 2 brothers, Simon, later called Peter, and Andrew. They were fishing through their nets into the lake. They were fishing, throwing their nets into the lake. It was their regular work. Jesus said to them, "Come with me. I'll make a new kind of fisherman out of you. I'll show you how to catch men and women instead of perch and bass." They didn't ask questions, but simply dropped their nets and followed. A short distance down the beach, they came upon another pair of brothers, James and John, Zebedee's sons. These 2 were sitting in a boat with their father, Zebedee, mending their fish nets. Jesus made the same offer to them, and they were just as quick to follow, abandoning the boat and their father. So, that is the initial election of the 12 disciples. The initial election of 12 disciples. The story takes place right after Christ came out of the wilderness where he was tested by the devil. And he had passed the test by showering Lucifer with his father's word and shocked and awed Lucifer that Christ didn't want any of his earthly kingdoms. He didn't want any of his money. He didn't want any of his fame. He didn't want any of his fortune. All Christ wanted was to do what he was created to do. He did not want religion. He wanted relationship. He did not want prosperity. He wanted purpose. He did not want possession. He wanted promise. And so he shone or showered the devil, Lucifer, with the word of God and dispelled all types of temptation. Now last week we talked about Joseph running from temptation, how he was the greatest example of what you're supposed to do with temptation. But this Christ guy, he took temptation head on and he used the word of God and dispelled every last bit of it. It sent Lucifer scouring to his knees. Cowardice the young man was. Absolutely incredible. And so from there, Christ spent some time waiting, because remember, Christ's prelude was John the Baptist, his cousin. For John the Baptist leaped in Elizabeth's womb when Mary came into the courtyard or into her house. John the Baptist leaped in his mother's womb at the presence of his cousin, Jesus Christ. So the Bible says that when John went to prison, Christ heard of this, and then his ministry began. His ministry began. And it took place in Zebulun and Naphtali. according to the prophecy given by the prophet Isaiah in the book of Isaiah. And it talks about how Christ was supposed to come and begin his ministry on the outskirts of Zebulun and Nephtali, the areas outside of Capernaum. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. So that time, Christ began his election of the 12 disciples. And he started with 3 major disciples. Eons ago, Yahweh had an election in the third heaven, and he created Robert Holbrook Smith and William Griffith Wilson. Just over 2 centuries ago, a short time, in 1879, formerly known as Dr. Rob, and in 1895, formerly known as Bill Wilson or Bill W., the creation was manifested. And these 2 created manifestations of what Christ elected in the eons, or in the heavens eons ago, were the 2 founders of Alcoholics Anonymous. 16 years apart in age and 220 miles apart in geography, in the great state of Vermont, grew up 2 young men. The state of Vermont can be accredited with as the birthplace of these 2 astounding young men, 2 young men that created Alcoholics Anonymous. Absolutely incredible. But there was a problem. These 2 young men were outlandish alcoholics. Both of them one day had a spiritual epiphany as they were members of a group called the Oxford Group. Now, the Oxford Group was founded by a missionary, Christian missionary. It was a Christian organization founded by a Christian missionary named Dr. Frank Bushman. Dr. Frank believed that all problems in earth, or on earth, or in life, stem from fear and, God forgive me, I just forgot my thought, stem from fear and selfishness. So Dr. Bushman believed that your problems came from the fears that you have and the selfishness that you have. Now, his solution to this, he realized that the solution to living with this fear and this selfishness pivoted on understanding that you must surrender your life to God. You must surrender your life to God. You must surrender your life to God. In an unsuccessful business trip right outside of Akron, Ohio, Bill Wilson was on the verge or the brink of relapsing after 15 years of sobriety. And in that relapse, he came into the knowledge of a young man by the name of Dr. Rob, or Robert Holbrook Smith. Their meeting or their introduction produced what is called the 12-step book of recovery for Alcoholics Anonymous. Absolutely incredible book. This book has been attested or accredited to the recovery of over 100,000 of people, alcoholics, all over this great nation. And no, I am not an alcoholic, but I have found some very interesting correlations between this book and God's election of the 12 disciples. And it has cultivated the message tonight, which is entitled Yahweh's 12-Step Program. Now, to some people, this is going to be very, 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 possibly very, very boring. But to me, I am a thumper. I am so in love with knowledge these days. It's absolutely incredible. I truly believe that the only way to God is through Christ. But I do not believe the only way through Christ or to Christ is through the church. I believe there's other avenues that you can find or take to meet Christ. There are stories all over the Bible. The woman at the well, the the man at the pool of Bethesda, the blind man on the side of the road, Bartimaeus. These people were not in the church, yet they met Christ. And I believe that this 12-step book, created by the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous, Dr. Rob Holbrook Smith and William Griffith Wilson, is an absolutely incredible book. And behind the teachings that they derived from Oxford Woods, they were able to build Alcoholics Anonymous. And now, millions, hundreds of thousands, almost millions of people have recovered from their alcoholic addiction based on these 12-step programs. And it's an absolute incredible thing. And I'm being able to cultivate a message based on these 12 steps inside of this. So for the next 4 weeks, I'm going to give you 3 steps of Yahweh's 12-step program. We're going to talk about some of their their definite similarities to this 12-step programs of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I have found some similarities between the two. And we're going to talk about some characteristics of these awesome 12 apostles. I find great joy in talking about this because I am an apostle, Apostle C.J. Watt II. Absolutely incredible. So for the next 4 weeks, I'm going to be bringing you 3 of the 12 each week. Now, that's going to exit out my vacation. This sinus infection, it's just exited out my vacation. I am not going to go on vacation. I need to heal up so that I can be prepared for Trail to Tattoo Target. So, this week, next week, I'm going to bring you the first 6. I'm going to take a break on the 27th, and then the next 2 weeks, I'm going to bring you the last 6. So, the first 3 tonight are, first off, according to the book of Matthew, Jesus saw Andrew and his brother Simon Peter first. Andrew and Simon Peter first. Now, as I did my study on the 12 disciples, I used a, what is it called? Let's call it a source. I used the source truthbook.com, and I found some incredible characteristics about these 12 disciples. Now, initially, I thought Simon Peter was the leader of the 12 disciples. But according to my findings on Truthbook, I found that Andrew was the leader of the apostolistic group of apostles that Christ elected. Absolutely incredible. Andrew's name means manly and strong. For he was a manly and strong man, Andrew was. Very soft-spoken. He was not as outspoken as his brother Simon, but he was very, very influential. Very, very influential. And he had the spirit of discernment, which is absolutely incredible. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to read his step right here out of the book. And according to what I have been inspired by Yahweh, the Spirit, in the connections between the 12 disciples and the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, as I have given step 4 to Andrew. And step 4 reads this: make a searching and fearless moral inventory or moral inventory of ourselves. And it gives this byline: how instincts can exceed their proper function. Step 4 is an effort to discover our liabilities, things that take money out of your pocket, basic problem of extremes and extensive drives. Please excuse the Hell Angel writers, they're having a party tonight. Misguided morale inventory can result in guilt, grandiosity, or blaming others. Assets, which are things that put money in your pocket, can be loaded with liabilities. Self-justification is dangerous. Willingness to take inventory brings light and new confidence. Step 4 is beginning a lifetime practice. Common symptoms of emotional insecurity are worry, anger, self-pity, and depression. Inventory reviews relationships, importance of thoroughness, etc. So, as you can see in that step, they covered a lot of personal traits. They were talking about self-justification and how dangerous it is. But they were also talking about willingness and how to take inventory of things that bring light and new confidence. And that's what Andrew did. Andrew had the spirit of discernment. For he was the first disciple to discern that Judas Iscariot was a dirtbag. He found out that Judas was a dirtbag. Absolutely incredible this young man Andrew was. He was the leader. He was 33 years old. His age absolutely means in the Hebrew that it means that he's connected to promise. So when God chose Andrew, or when Christ chose Andrew as the first disciple, he was choosing him based on the fact that Andrew could see into the hearts. He could see if a person's cardiac coughing was clean or not. And so he made a searching and fearless moral inventory, or moral inventory, of not only himself, but of the other 12. Absolutely incredible. And so that's why the step 4 is attested to Andrew. Absolutely incredible, man. How these things correlate. It says step 4 is the beginning of lifetime practice. It's not happenstance that God chose Andrew first. He was the beginning of Christ's ministry. Everybody teaches that he reached out to Simon first. Not very often do I hear people say that Christ reached out to Andrew first. He reached out to Andrew first. Absolutely incredible. The Bible even says that Andrew was older than Christ. It's absolutely incredible, man. He's number 4. Step number 4. Absolutely incredible. Common symptoms of emotional insecurity are worry, anger, and self-pity and depression. And in order for you to be able to discern what is going on in other people's cardiac coffins, these things have to be cleared out. You can't have self-pity, no worry. Do you know that worry, I realized this week, I found this revelation, I think it came off of the radio, said that worrying is literally saying that God is incapable of working it out. You're worrying. It means that God is getting it wrong. You're worrying. Your anger. The Bible says to be angry but sin not. So that's a justified emotion, is to be angry. And this depression thing, everybody knows it's depression. And alcohol is a depressant. I don't know why everybody ingests alcohol when they get depressed. It is a depressant, which makes it an amplifier. You amplify your depression with every tequila shot you take, every Jaeger bomb, every shot of vodka you take, the Smirnoff, Quavo. All of these things bring about depression because they are depressants. They amplify your depression. And though I am not a drinker, I used to work at WLG, and all those people I work with over there were borderline alcoholics. I weren't in their personal life, so I don't know if they were alcoholics or not, but they were borderline alcoholics. And one thing they taught me is that you don't mix light and dark liquor. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. And so, having these characteristics, Andrew was able to see into Judas's heart. And so that's why God picked him. That's why God elected him. He elected him because Andrew was a seer. He could discern things that were happening before they even happened. Absolutely incredible. The next young man we're going to talk about tonight is his brother, Simon Peter. Now, we all know Peter. We all know Peter. We all know Peter. Absolutely incredible young man, but absolutely stupid young man. When I think about Peter, I think about the Mount of Transfiguration. When Christ chose him as a confidant, took him up the mountain to introduce him to God the Father, Moses, and Elijah. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. I preached a message a few weeks ago about how Christ took him up there because he needed to have a conversation with Moses and Elijah about his transfiguration, about his trip out of the wilderness into the light. Absolutely incredible. And then while they were on the Mount of Transfiguration, Peter opened up his mouth and he said, "Oh my gosh, we're here. Moses is here. Elijah is here. Christ is here. We need to build altars." And Christ looked at that dude and said, "Boy, shut up. This is not a time for religion. We don't need any religious things up here. This is relationship, my friend." Peter was something absolutely incredible. He was something absolutely incredible. His name Simon means, let's look this up real quick, number 8. His name Simon means God has heard. So God heard from Simon. But most of the time he heard stuff that he had no business saying. Simon Peter always put his foot in his mouth. The name Peter means rock. For it was Christ who told him, "Peter, You will be the rock, or Cephas in the Hebrew, that I build my church on. This is why Catholicism, or Catholics, make up 1.16 billion people in this world, because Christ gave the torch to Peter. It was this information that allowed me to derive or think that Peter was in charge of the disciples. But he was not. It was in fact Andrew who was in charge of the disciples. In fact, Peter was a great disciple, but he was not in charge. And his step, the step that I have equated from this Alcoholics Anonymous Bible, is this, step number 8. Now remember, number 8 means new beginnings. And it says this: made a list of all persons who had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. This and the next 2 steps are concerned with personal relations. Learning to live with others is a fascinating adventure. Obstacles, reluctance to forgive, non-admission of wrongs to others, purposeful forgetting, necessity of exhaustive survey of past, deepening insight results from thoroughness, kinds of harm done to others, avoiding extreme judgments, taking the objective view. Step 8 is the beginning of the end of isolation. Wow! If anybody knew anything about isolation, St. Peter did. Absolutely incredible. The other thing that is amazing to me about Peter's story is this: Christ told him that you will deny me 3 times. The rooster will crow 3 times and you will deny me 3 times. And Peter said, Christ, are you crazy? Dude, you're my dude, you're my boy. If you go to the Christ, if you die, I am going with you. And Christ said, get behind me, Satan, for you know not what you do. Now, remember we were talking about free will or free choice? If Peter would have in fact initiated or put in his free will, he would have went against what Christ wanted him to do. For it had been willed, or it had been purposed, for Peter to deny Christ 3 times, which sent Peter directly into this isolation. It says step 8 is the beginning of the end of isolation. So Peter represents step 8. He represents step 8. He chose to do what Christ willed him to do. It was God's will for him to deny Christ 3 times. Peter didn't want to do it. He wanted to go with his will. But in the end, he chose to do what God created him to do. And it sent him into isolation. But let us not forget what happened on the day of Pentecost, Acts 1 and 2. For after Peter saw Christ's return from the dead, it sparked a fire under Peter's behind. Not only did he become the rock, he became the rock of fire. For Peter preached and 2,000 people were saved. On the day of Pentecost, he opened his mouth. He came out of isolation. He forgave himself first, because that's what drove him into isolation. Made a list of all persons who had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Simon Peter, Cephas, the rock, the person God has hurt himself first. He had to bring amends and forgiveness to himself first before he could go on and get out of isolation. Peter was addicted to isolation for what he had done. For remember, it was his will. He wanted to not deny Christ. He wanted to ride with Christ to the cross. Peter had the most influence on Christ himself. For remember, it was Peter who discovered or distinguished that Christ was the Son of God. And Christ said to him, who told you this? And Peter in his dumbfoundedness said, I don't know. I just know that you're the Christ. And Christ said, for God has revealed this to you. Peter made amends. It says, learning to live with others in a fascinating adventure. Obstacles, reluctance to forgive, non-admission of wrongs to others, purposeful forgetting. He did not forget what he did. He did not forget what he did. It drove him into isolation. But Peter, step number 8, means new beginnings. And he was a new beginning. For like I just said. He preached and 2,000 people were saved on the day of Pentecost. Absolutely incredible that Peter was. He was a dummy because he kept putting his foot in his mouth. But when it was time for Peter to do what he needed to do, he did it. Absolutely incredible. I am inspired by that young man. He did what he needed to do. And that's what qualified him as step number 8. This book, I'm telling you, is their Bible. This was actually handed to me by a client who is a counselor for Alcoholics Anonymous. And I told him that I have been trying to research and trying to find how I can get my hands on this book. And I have been praying about that. And he took his book, that's why it has writing on the front and notes in the inside. He took his book and this is his personal book, and gave it right to me. Absolutely incredible. The next person we want to talk about is James Zebedee. Now, a lot of people believe that James was Jesus' brother. But according to my findings, he was not Jesus' brother. Jesus' brother amongst the 12 was Jude. James was Jesus' cousin, for James Zebedee was the son of Zebedee. His mother was Mary, the mother of Jesus' sister. So James and Jesus were cousins. Now, James had a brother named John. Now, you know John as the disciple Jesus loved. And we'll talk about him next week. But this week we're going to talk about James. And James is absolutely one of my favorite. For you see, James took an Old Testament inspiration and brought it to the New Covenant. If you read the book of James, you will be absolutely blown away about what he talks about. He brings Old Testament principles into New Testament growth. He takes Old Testament principles and makes them New Testament methods. Absolutely incredible. He talks about how if you are a friend of the world, you are a hater of Christ. Oh my gosh, he talks about how you should count all your trials and tribulations as joy. He says walk through them and celebrate. He has absolutely inspired me on my journey to my wealthy season. It is because of the inspiration from James and a couple of the apostles that I am living a victorious life. Though I am under the weather tonight, I am getting this word out. So please forgive me if I seem a little lethargic tonight or disconnected. I'm not. I'm just trying to do what God has impressed me to do. So the step that I attest to James Zebedee is step number 9. And it says this: may direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. A tranquil mind is the first requisite for good judgment. Good timing is important in making amends. What is courage? Prudence means taking calculated chances. Amends begin when we join AA. Peace of mind cannot be bought at the expense of others. Need for discretion, readiness to take consequences of our past, and to make responsibility for well-being of others in spirit of step 9. Absolutely incredible. Now, some of James' characteristics are this. James was a mild-mannered man, but he was also wild. He was very talkative, but he was very quiet. He had a lot of righteous indignation. Righteous indignation. Righteous indignation. Which means that he tried to find justification in being angry about things that were going against the kingdom. And then once he got these things out, he was totally quiet for a while. TheTruthBook.com says that James spent times, hours, bouts, months and weeks sometimes of just pure silence. He would not say anything. But when it was time for James to speak, he was very prolific, very passionate. He got out what he needed to say. Absolutely incredible this young man was. But James was two-sided. He was probably a Gemini, for he had two sides. He was very talkative, and he was very quiet. He was very talkative, and he was very quiet. He inspired me because he took Christ's teachings on humility. Absolutely incredible. He learned from Christ how to deal with different people. how to treat comrades, constituents, and confidants. Comrades, constituents, and confidants, how they need to be treated. Remember, we were talking about how you're supposed to love people for who they are. You did not create them, so you have no right to change them. You must love them for what God has created them to do. And James, the brother of John, the disciple that Christ loved, took this attribute from Christ. Absolutely incredible attribute to take from Christ. He learned how to deal with people as they are. So he watched Christ. The Truth Book says that he spent a lot of time in Christ's face. As a matter of fact, so did his brother. And it was the time that they spent together with Christ that deemed Christ to give them a nickname, the Sons of Thunder. For they followed after Christ like a little puppy. They loved him. Absolutely loved him. And next week we're going to talk about John, who took that and reversed it and was loved by Christ. So James, he picked up this attribute from Christ, and he was able to learn how to talk to people at the level in which they were. That's why he had a tranquil mindset, which is the first prerequisite of good judgment. He was able to judge people based on the fact that his mind was clear. He kept his cardiac coffin clean because he spent a lot of time with Christ. He was able to do what the step says. It says, make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. That is righteous judgment. I was just talking about righteous judgment to my boss this morning. For he has had to deal with some of his children or some of his employees. He had to use righteous judgment to deal with some of his employees. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. So, James was able to pick up this righteous indignation and righteous judgment from Christ, which made him qualified for step number 9. He had a lot of prudence. He calculated his thoughts before he said it. This is what made him a prolific speaker, because he was able to think about what he said before he said it. I once heard a wise man say, his name is Mike Murdoch, he said this: in this generation, if you think twice, you have become a genius. That means if you stop and look and think once and stop and look and think twice, you have qualified as an Einstein. You have qualified as a genius. Absolutely incredible. And that's what James did. He was a genius. His mind was sharp, super sharp. Super sharp. Super sharp. Absolutely incredible. So, those are the first 3 steps of Yahweh's 12-step program. You have Sir Andrew, you have Sir Peter, and you have Sir James. Next week we're going to bring you the next 3. The first of the 3 is John, and the other 2, we're going to leave those anonymous until next week. It has been an absolute joy tonight to be with you. I have had a hard time getting through this broadcast. People, I am extremely under the weather. It is on top of me. So please forgive if I have not had a lot of enthusiasm tonight. But I do love you very, very much. I appreciate you sitting and listening to me jip and jabber about the 12 apostles. I hope to be feeling at least 80% next week so that I can bring you some more enthusiasm and some more love. I ask you to pray for me as I make it through this week. There's a lot going on. This is a pretty heavy week for me, and I would appreciate your prayers. I need them. I absolutely need them. So, I'm going to end the show early tonight because I am a little under the weather. I know I keep saying that, but before I go, if in fact you are struggling with an addiction tonight, then you're a Christian, or you have spent some time with people who say this book that has been created by 2 great men who struggled with extreme alcoholism. I'm talking about Dr. Rob and Bill W. They struggle with extreme alcoholism. If you ever get a chance, you should Google it. and read their bios. Wikipedia is pretty accurate. These young men struggle with alcoholism. So if in fact tonight you are struggling with alcoholism or some type of addiction, as always, I would implore you to get in God's face and talk to him about your addiction, because he knows where you are. He loves you and he wants to pull you from where you are. He wants to pull you from where you are. Remember this purpose, because he may be getting ready to qualify you to promote. So if you have a chance, talk to Yahweh. Talk to God the Father, Jesus Christ. Talk to these guys, which are the same person. They can help you. And if you get a chance, go and pick up this book. It's absolutely incredible. If you are alcoholic, if you're not an alcoholic, pick up this book and begin to read it. It is an absolutely incredible book. I don't have many addictions. I am addicted to donuts. But this book helps you deal with dependency upon addictions. This book also helps you, and they work hand in hand. I guarantee you. So, you have been tuning into a victorious life journey to my wealthy season. I am Apostle C.J. Watson II, divinely inspired creator of Barbers for Christ Ministries, where we are religiously barbering yet purposely serving. And we have been broadcasting live here from 499 Cuts, you are taking East Barbershop in smelly Lake Elsinore, California. I bid you adieu this evening. I love you. Love your enemies this week. Take extra special care of your clients, you barbers and cosmetologists. Keep me in your prayers. I am getting ready to leave out of this studio and go jump in my queen size bed. I love you people. Love your enemies and have a great week. God bless you. Bye-bye.